by your phone. All right, so this is Roger Erickson with the National Weather Service with our weather update on Tropical Storm Cindy for 4 p.m. Tuesday, June 20th. The opening situational overview, basically, Cindy now is expected to make landfall as a tropical. Okay, so I'm going to have to mute everyone here, so hold on a second. Good news with it.
The leader has muted your line. To unmute your line, press #6.
All right, so I got everyone muted. If everyone can mute their phones, even though I'm muted for you, so that we'll be able to ask questions and answer them at the end of this conference call. So our overview section here, we're looking at Tropical Storm Cindy is expected to make landfall as a tropical storm Thursday morning in southeast Texas. The forecast track has shifted a little bit further to the west from this morning, but the bottom line is the impacts from the rain, the storm surge tides, and the tornado risk is still going to occur well east of the landfall. So all of our Louisiana area is still under the gun from the impacts from the system, even though we're talking about a landfall over in southeast Texas. The tropical storm warning continues for Jefferson and Orange counties in southeast Texas, as well as all of the I-10 corridor to the coast parishes in southwest and south central Louisiana. So the main impacts that we're going to be focusing on during this call is the heavy rain, above normal tides, gusty winds, and a few tornadoes, being the main threats for our forecast area for tomorrow and Thursday. So here's the latest satellite imagery, and one imagery to the next looks very similar, other than the track center of the low going a little bit further to the north and northwest. Cindy's been very adamant in producing a very large swath of showers and thunderstorms, heavy rain on the east and north sides of the system. So you can see, even in a satellite imagery here, there's some big thunderstorms just off the coast of southeast Louisiana that's going to be either moving onshore or just paralleling the coast down there. And some of that activity we'll have to be monitoring here locally to see how much of that ends up in our lower Acadiana region for like Iberia, St. Martin, St. Mary parishes tonight. This is what the radar looks like from a composite of all the weather service radars in the southeastern United States. The blue splotches you see in Texas and Louisiana, that's the ground clutter. And you see, we don't show the rain out in the Gulf of Mexico because of the limitations of how far the radar actually shows. But you do see the rain bands that are now starting to show up even in parts of Vermilion Parish, Acadia Parish, Lafayette. We even got rain bands that far to the west now that have developed. They are, of course, in southeast Louisiana and extending along the Gulf Coast, which is also merged with a frontal boundary to our north. That's actually up there to the Carolinas. All that thunderstorm activity and shower activity you see from Georgia to the Carolinas is associated with a frontal boundary that's also kind of draped down across the region. So we're kind of in the middle of a merger between the cold front to the north and this tropical system to our south. So because of that, we've got what we call a tight pressure gradient. So the winds have been rather gusty today. So this graphic here shows you the wind direction and the wind gusts that we had this afternoon about 3:30. So the wind speeds, or should say the wind direction in general, is out of the northeast across southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana, as well as central Louisiana. A little bit more of a east to southeast component perhaps across south central Louisiana. Now the red numbers on here indicate the wind gusts. So you can see like in Lake Charles area, we're anywhere from 22 to 24 miles an hour. Cameron was 27, Sabine Pass 26 miles an hour. Orange was 16, 19 up near Woodville, 18 around Fort Polk area, 18 up near Alexandria. But the bigger numbers are probably well off to our east. And we'll wrap it up and say New Iberia 22 and down at P92 Salt Point in St. Mary Parish 20 miles an hour. But we got 28-mile wind gusts there. You can see off the Vermilion Parish line in the Gulf. Further down in the Gulf, there's 44 miles an hour, 53, 54 miles an hour. Southeast Louisiana off the tip there, you can see values up in the 50-plus mile-an-hour range. So very strong winds are just that close to the coast of Louisiana, and that should be moving closer to shore and moving onshore over the next 12 to 24 hours. Here's the latest forecast track. The first thing to point out is that orange blob that we're looking at on there. That's the coverage of the tropical storm force winds, which is primarily north and east of the center of circulation, which is indicated by the X on there. Currently at 25.7 north and 90.6 west. It's been stationary since the 1 o'clock update for the advisory. The sustained winds are 45 miles an hour, but they do think it will go another 5 to 10 miles an hour stronger before landfall early Thursday morning. You see the forecast points basically coming into southeast Texas. So you do see also the forecast point by 1 p.m. Thursday being inland, still a tropical storm. So I wouldn't be surprised to still see some tropical storm force winds even extending into the afternoon hours on Thursday in parts of East Texas. The tropical storm warning now extends from, you can see, all the way down past Galveston, San Luis Pass, all the way across southeast Texas and into southwest Louisiana, southeast Louisiana. So the whole coverage area is a tropical storm warning. And the main point here with all this, the forecast track, even though it's shifted further to the west, the impacts from the weather, such as the rainstorm, surge, and tornadoes, is still going to be extending well to the east, which is why that blue line is drawn all the way to the state line of Louisiana, Mississippi. So for us in our region, we're still looking at a low-end threat from the winds and a little bit on the higher end of the low-end threat from surge, but rainfall flooding is on the higher end of moderate. Tornadoes is on the solid part of the low threat. The confidence level has been increased up to about a 5, so we're getting better confidence as the storm's approaching the coastline. The next graphic we're looking at is the probability of tropical storm force winds. And the key point that we like to bring out during these graphics here is we're looking at trends. So rather than focusing on the actual numbers, for instance, it's showing Sabine passing Cameron, the light shade of orange, which is between 60 and 70%. Really the key point here is that earlier today, that value was more like 30%. So what we're showing here is the trend where the probabilities for tropical storm force winds are going up across much of our forecast area due to the track of the system getting closer to landfall. The bottom line with the wind speeds that we're forecasting, 40 to 40 miles an hour with gusts in the 50 to 60 mile range. We're expecting some trees to fall and damage to buildings with scattered power outages, especially along the path of the system and to the right of it. Now here's the timing of the tropical storm force winds, and this is similar to what we showed this morning. For the left side, it shows the earliest reasonable arrival time. The right side is the most likely arrival time. So you can see on the left, depending on what we're looking at, I would use the left picture as probably when you could potentially see a wind gust maybe of tropical storm force winds. So you can see that by later on this evening, it would be in southeast Louisiana, by overnight tonight into our region, and by Wednesday morning, pretty much our entire forecast area. But the picture on the right is really the one to focus on in terms of the most likely time of arrival of tropical storm force winds. We're basically looking at lower Acadiana sometime early Wednesday morning, all of Acadiana early for Wednesday morning. By the afternoon hours, it will be slowly extended to the north and west, and by the evening hours, it should be extended all the way into southeast Texas and even up into central Louisiana. So I created a table here. The table is a little bit different. I wanted to show not only the tropical storm force winds, but I wanted to talk about the gusts associated with it, because really the gusts is what is going to be causing the damage in the first place. So we're not talking about the duration of the actual sustained winds. We're talking about the duration of the gust factor associated with Tropical Storm Cindy. So you can see across the 6 counties in southeast Texas, basically the southern tier area for Jefferson and Orange County, we expect it to start at some point tomorrow afternoon and end during the midday time frame on Thursday. The inland locations for Hardin, Jasper, Newton, and Tyler counties, we're expecting the activity to start more likely in the evening hours or nighttime hours on Wednesday, and also continuing until midday on Thursday. So you can see the duration of the number of hours that we're looking at for tropical storm wind gusts, ranging from 8 to 12 hours for Jasper, Newton, and Tyler counties versus a 16 to 20 hour scenario for Jefferson and Orange. So while we're not looking at sustained winds lasting 16 to 20 hours, there's going to be the potential for wind gusts to last that long across the region in southeast Texas. Here's the big table for our Louisiana area, and we'll keep it up here for a few moments while I'm just kind of talking through it. The bottom line, we're looking at smaller duration values for our northern areas. You can see Avoyelles Parish. We're only talking about 2 to 6 hours at some point between Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night. It's not going to be a long duration period. It'll be more sporadic up there and in the Avoyelles. Same thing with the Rapides Parish. Even though it's starting Wednesday night and ending Thursday morning, we're talking about a 4 to 8 hour window where these wind gusts will get that high. Versus closer to the coast, you can see the numbers get much higher. For instance, Cameron Parish, we're starting tomorrow morning, continuing through midday Thursday. We're talking about over a 24-hour period for possibility of wind gusts over tropical storm force winds down there. And same thing for Vermilion Parish. Those are the two parishes that have the potential for the longest duration of tropical storm force winds tomorrow. So even though the storm is making landfall in Texas, we're talking about locally some long duration winds for our coastal parishes of Cameron and Vermilion parishes. The values decrease a little bit further to the east and north. You can see St. Mary Parish is in the 20 to 24 hours, as well as Jeff Davis, Lafayette, Iberia parishes, as well as Acadia Parish, and then a little bit shorter hours for these other locations, 16 to 20 up in Allen Parish, 16 to 20 for Beauregard and Evangeline. St. Landry Parish, because where you're located and the angle of the storm is coming to the coast, they have a little bit shorter duration as well of 6 to 12 hours. Vernon Parish is on the lower end as well, 12 to 16 hours because they're a little bit further inland, although they will be close to the center of circulation during the day Thursday. So whereas many locations, the winds will be dropping off Thursday morning, for Vernon, they actually continue into the midday time frame on Thursday. So that's the table that we've got. We'll be emailing this out to you guys so you can kind of take a look at it from the perspective of what we're looking at for wind gusts across southeast Texas, as well as southwest, south central, and central Louisiana for the next for the next day or two. Now, from the tides perspective, you can see that we've hit our high tide today for both Sabine Pass and Calcasieu Pass. We're going into a low tide, so the tidal threat's going to be minimal for the next few hours, but the next high tide will be coming in around midnight or a few hours after midnight, so that's going to be the next timeline from when we're expecting tides to be a problem. Right now the tides are running about a foot above normal, but I wouldn't be surprised if later on tonight for the high tide coming in after midnight, as well as that secondary high tide coming in around midday tomorrow, that the tides could run anywhere from 1 to maybe as high as 3 feet above normal. And so we're expecting minor coastal flooding in Sabine Pass to Port Arthur areas along Highway 87 down there. Of course, Sabine Pass is very vulnerable down there themselves. Highway 82 between, I should say, east and west of Holly Beach and downtown Cameron are the focus areas. I didn't add it to the slide here, but something that we talked a little bit about on the call earlier with a question from Orange County, there is the potential that we're going to see a little bit of water into portions of the Orange County, perhaps down by the Bridge City area, but we're not talking about the whole city going underwater or anything like that, more like the low-lying areas. Some of the streets in the Bridge City area could also see some water coming in, primarily during the timing of the high tides, either late tonight and then again tomorrow afternoon. Further to the east, we got the gauge down in Vermilion Parish, Freshwater Canal, and the one over in St. Mary Parish with the Amaretta Pass. Very similar valleys that we're talking about, a 1 to 3 foot range expected to be running above normal today through Thursday. They're also going into a low tide right now, and similar to what we were talking about for Sabine Pass and Cameron, they got 2 high tides tomorrow, one a little bit after midnight and another one in the early part of the afternoon. But you see, for both of these events, the good news is with the storm approaching the coastline during the afternoon hours, we're actually going to be approaching a low tide. So we're still expecting the tides to be pushed up, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it's 3 feet above normal, but with it being forecast to be near zero, we're still talking about it going up to about 3 feet above sea level, or below mean low water. So that's the values that we're going to be looking at. So the usual spots that we talked about flooding, Pecan Island, Intercoastal City, Delcom, on the Vermilion side, same thing on Iberia side, as well as Sycamore Point and Burns Point down in St. Mary Parish. The rainfall forecast is not different from what we talked about this morning. We're still looking at a swath of 4 to 6 inches across at least our coastal parishes, 2 to 4 inches for the inland areas across the region. And obviously, if we do get some extended rain bands in our area, we can have the potential to see over 10 inches of rain. The greater risk right now still looks like it's going to be further to our east from, I would say, like Slidell, New Orleans area over to Mobile. You can see that's where the red bullseye for the 10 to 15 inches of rain is. But I don't want to minimize the fact that we're going to be under the gun also for heavy rains for the next couple of days. And so even though you're going to be hearing a lot of media coverage for this event over to our east, don't forget to be monitoring the weather radars locally. We'll be giving updates tomorrow, of course, on the rain bands and how much rain we're seeing locally in our area as well. We'll be issuing flash flood warnings for these rain bands if they're producing substantial rainfall rates over 3 inches of rain an hour. The main issue that, once again, talking about this rainfall problem here, is that because the tides are running above normal, all these areas that typically drain into the local rivers that then drain into the Gulf of Mexico, everything's going to be backed up. And so it's going to be very difficult to get that runoff to get down into the rivers and drain into the Gulf of Mexico. And so we're expecting to see the usual problems of flooded roadways. And unfortunately, I wouldn't be surprised to hear about some areas where some homes might get some water in them as well, depending on exactly where the rain bands set up over the next couple of days. This graphic also hasn't changed from this morning. Just keeping it up here for continuity's sake, talking about the excessive rainfall threat today, mainly for southeast Louisiana, but for tomorrow you see the slight risk extends across all of our forecast area, really. And then Thursday, southeast Texas is going to be the bullseye because that's where the landfall is. I wouldn't be surprised if they extend that slight risk for Thursday into our Louisiana area as well, though, for Thursday. We'll see what they do with that tomorrow morning. The tornado threat is also similar, or I should say the same as what we showed this morning. For the threat for later on today into tonight, it's going to be down in the lower Acadiana region. That's where the threat zone will be for tornadoes. Tomorrow, the threat zone is going to be the I-10 corridor between Lake Charles and the Atchafalaya Basin down to the coast. And shaded in that yellow that we're looking at there, the slight risk. That's going to be the focus area for tornadoes tomorrow. And then Thursday, really the whole forecast area, but the risk is much lower. It's marginal. We're talking about a 5% probability for a marginal risk on Thursday, but there still could be isolated tornadoes if we have a rain band in the area during the daytime hours on Thursday. So our summary sheet, we're looking at Cindy making a landfall now as a tropical storm for Thursday morning in southeast Texas. The track has shifted further west, but the impacts from the rain, tides, and tornadoes is still going to be occurring east of landfall. And so it's very important for us to not focus on the individual track part of this and instead focus on what we're calling for the weather impacts for your local communities. So the tropical storm warning is still in effect for the same locations, and we're still advertising the same effects associated with the weather. I've made a little table here basically that are bullet points for the different aspects of it. The rainfall, we're looking at 3 to 5 inches of rain, locally higher amounts of 10 inches possible Wednesday and Thursday in the stronger rain bands. Tides running 1 to 3 feet above normal for Wednesday and Thursday, with those key spots that we talked about for the potential for streets going underwater, for the coastal locations that typically are more vulnerable. The tornado risk is going to be slight for along and south of the I-10 corridor for southwest and south central Louisiana on Wednesday, and then probably extending for the entire region on Thursday. And the wind threat is going to be for these tropical storm force winds. We are expecting the gusts to begin in Acadiana Wednesday morning and extend across the remainder of our forecast area during the daytime Wednesday before weakening by the midday period on Thursday. So that's the last slide. The next conference call that I'll be holding will be on Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. I'm going to unmute my other phones here. And if anyone has any questions,
The leader has unmuted
answer
your
your other
line.
questions for you.
Roger, this is Joey Fons in Lafayette. The wind timing and duration chart was extremely helpful. Thank you. Just confirming for Lafayette Parish, you are expecting tropical storm force winds for us tomorrow morning. Would you venture that would be early morning or late morning? And when, if ever, do you expect that we would receive sustained tropical storm force winds for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think for the the gust factor, it could start early in the morning, especially if we have a rain band in the area, like at 6 in the morning, it could be occurring at that early. The sustain factor will be probably more like late morning.
Before noon, though, you think?
Yeah, just a little before noon for the sustained side of it. Yep.
Okay.
Just a reminder,
Rod, this is Craig in Lafayette. What about the rainfall? What is your best?
We can certainly ask, but we have Andy Patrick here as well. So,
right now we're broad brushing it still with that 3 to 5 inches because it's going to depend on where going back to this picture here with these rain bands. If the rain band sets up over Lafayette Parish, well, it's going to be 10 inches, but we're broad brushing a 3 to 5 inch with the potential for 10 for everyone, including Lafayette Parish. Obviously, when we're going through this real time tomorrow, like I said, we'll be issuing the flash flood warnings. If it comes up to it, we'll have to issue a flash flood emergency if it looks like it's going to be a super significant event as well. We've done that in the past for the storm that we had last August over there in Acadiana. We had emergencies for parts of St. Martin Parish, Lafayette, Acadia, and whatnot.
Roger, it's Becky in Vermilion. How early do you think we would start getting tropical force winds here in Vermilion?
For Vermilion, the reality is during these rain bands that we got some rain bands going through your area now. So hypothetically, you could get an isolated gust there tonight. But in terms of the sustained perspective, we're looking at tomorrow morning, probably give or take 6 to 8 o'clock in the morning time frame for you guys.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Is there any other question? Just to let everyone know, Donald Junk's going to do another Facebook Live at 7 p.m. this week, so that'll be available for people, the public and whatnot, to dial in and watch him and ask questions on that one as well. We'll email the slides out here in the next few minutes. If you got any questions, give me a call. I'll be here in the office.
okay, I'm going to ask Andy to come up now and make some comments, and then if you have any weather questions for Andy.
Okay, thank you, Dick. It looks like just from an update for this afternoon, Cindy looks like it's going to make landfall just a little further west across southeast Texas. Overall, though, I think from the impact standpoint, as Roger mentioned, they're going to be pretty much the same. We're expecting generally 3 to 6 inches of rain for the event. We think most of it will likely fall probably in the late Wednesday night time frame. So, and that's probably where we're going to see the highest winds as well. So, to hone in on it, actually, when we think the most or the worst part of Cindy is going to be, it's probably going to be during that time. So, as far, yes. Basically, I would say more during the nighttime hours. I know Roger mentioned about the wind gusts potentially coming in. I think it was Wednesday afternoon through midday Thursday. So, but if you're really honing in on when as Cindy approaches the coast, we're going to start probably seeing more of the sustained tropical storm force winds come in, as well as the heavier bands of rain. Before then, though, we could actually get the outer rain bands in, and that's where we could see some wind gusts with those, as well as some bursts of heavy rain. And as Roger showed up here for Wednesday, sometimes we can get some isolated tornadoes as well with these rain bands. So, as far as during Thursday, we probably will start to see, especially during the day Thursday, maybe a little bit of easing up on the rainfall, but again, the issue, though, with a more western track could be a little more persistent, heavier rain into the day Thursday. So that's probably the main change we're looking at right now. So, but the winds should start, we think, overall decreasing late Thursday night, and then by Friday, probably a lot of tropical moisture around, so some scattered showers and thunderstorms, but probably a lot less rain coverage during that time. So. Happy to take any questions.
On Friday, you're saying pretty much just normal thunderstorms and rain and appreciable?
Well, I would basically say the rainfall will be a lot more localized, meaning probably about, I'm going to say 40 to 50% coverage as opposed to say 70 or 80% for Wednesday and Thursday. So there'll be some periods of dry weather. But as Roger mentioned, another issue too, even though the center of Cindy is moving inland, we're going to have some persistent southerly winds. So the actual drainage of water combined with higher tides is still going to be problematic as far as water drainage. We're getting rid of a lot of any sort of water. So and the fact is, even though we probably will have a lot less rain, shower, and thunderstorm coverage on the day Friday, localized heavy rain over these areas could still pose some problems.
I saw about an hour ago on the Weather Channel, it was the National Hurricane Center, and they were reporting it as stationary. So, how can you determine these timelines?
A lot of it has to do with the fact that even though the stayed stationary more or less, the models are starting to pick it up and move its forwards, gradually increase its forward speed through time. So we think that, and also remember too, it is making landfall a little further west as well. So maybe perhaps a little bit of delay as far as and a little more duration of the tropical storm force winds. But overall, a lot of the models, a lot of the experts and scientists still believe that this system will likely start picking up its forward motion out of more of the northwest, eventually north-northwest.
Are there any updates regarding
Tropical Storm Brett, the latest on that, we haven't really talked a whole lot about it, but that's a good point. Brett is actually moving through the very lower part of, actually almost well below, almost towards the equator, more or less. It's very southern type of storm, and that is continuing a west to west-northwest movement. And right now, the longer track trends are taking it more into Central America. I don't think we'll be seeing any impacts from that at this time. Yes?
The track keeps moving west, but when you show the slide of how many inches of rain we're going to get, that doesn't seem to be moving west with the track.
That's a good question. Here's another thing to keep in mind, and that is the fact that if you looked at the satellite, the rain itself is still, or the large area of thunderstorm activity is still well displaced from the center. So even if it moves further west, it might say get closer toward Acadiana, at least let's say the more heavier amounts, and we'll have to keep an eye on that as we go through time. But overall, we think that, and as you can see on satellite, a lot of dry air is still undercutting Cindy, so that's kind of limiting any sort of rain impacts for our area at this time. But we do expect, again, once that system gets a little further west of it, the rain is going to start filling in quickly. For Lake Charles, keep in mind tropical storm force winds are about 39 miles per hour or higher to 74 miles per hour. So as we could see those type of winds hit Lake Charles as early as, let's say, mid-morning or so tomorrow, but we're thinking more it's going to be much later and more towards the Thursday afternoon. And it looks like that's the trend because a lot of the winds on the west side and even the southwest side, which we should still be on that side of the storm during that part of the day tomorrow, are relatively light compared to further east. We're still already seeing wind gusts over 50 miles per hour just off the southeast Louisiana coast. But once you get west of that low pressure system, we're only really talking maybe at most 15 to 20 miles per hour. I'm sorry, Wednesday afternoon, yes.
Wednesday afternoon, I'll fix that. Wednesday afternoon, not Thursday.
Yes, Wednesday afternoon. I'm sorry. Let me correct that. Wednesday.
Wednesday afternoon.
Wednesday afternoon.
Time for when to start and last 22 to 24 hours.
Correct. Probably ending around, I believe it was midday Thursday.
None that we've seen. I don't think we have anyone here from State Police or DOTD.
I did talk to Benny, and I mean, I did try to call Don. I haven't talked to Don yet, but I know that they're going to beef up just like we are their patrols, and we're moving assets and stuff now to both sides of the river as far as any flooding issues and stuff. So I think that's the only precautions we can really take at this point.
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah, are you asking primarily like the interstate?
I'm primarily asking about the interstate, the expectations on.
I-10 will likely not be closed. I-10 probably won't be closed for this.
I don't know, Mark, I can't speak on y'all's behalf, but I don't see this as being anything other than a bad thunderstorm that lasts longer than what we're normally used to. In other words, I don't foresee us, unless we just have some major power outage, that energy just can't keep up with real quick, there being any of the normal issues that we would have to deal with in a storm, like closing roads or curfews, or I just, again, unless there was just something would happen to make, I would think a major power outage would be the
Yeah, and
biggest.
we've asked Energy for an update on the estimated power outage. So
Is that fair to say, Mark? And
as soon as we get that, we'll send it out.
Deputy Chief Caldwell on this side of the house, they took precautions with the staffing control levels, but for law enforcement component, our problem is just traffic, cars stopping, and then people want us to go into that arena and then pull them out, which is futile. Because we're just taking our cars and putting them the same way.
Yeah, the two bridges, the only.
As far as traffic is concerned, for the police, just if you can stay off the road and you're not in a high water vehicle, please do so, because it creates a burden on our staff.
Which is the reason I asked, Texas has already issued a directive that Rainbow Bridge, Veterans Bridge, going from Bridge City to Port Arthur, is trying to get further down.
We haven't seen any indication of that.
Yeah, so I didn't know what the plan was.
There is an issue with the bridge. The winds are going to be about 10 miles an hour higher at the top of the bridge, but we've not seen anything from DOTD like that. And I think I saw that. I think it was more an advisory. Or did they say they were going to close it, or they said to stay?
Well, they said when the winds got to 40 to 44,
Okay.
they would.
We haven't seen anything on that.
And that's sustained winds. Yeah, I don't know that, yeah.
We're going to send you, Stitch. We're going to
pull
send
our
you.
I can tell you, we pull our vehicles in at 45 miles an hour and hump it down. I didn't gather that from this, that the sustained winds were going to stay, is that correct? I mean, we'll have tropical storm gusts, but.
I think that to answer your question, for most of that duration, that 20 to 24 hours, I would say most, and I don't want to qualify it with a percentage, but most of that will be gusts, yes, if that's what you're asking.
So, a difference in sustained, steady 45-mile-an-hour winds and just getting gusts repeatedly, and
Okay. Anyone else? Any more questions for Andy? Okay. We have any operational questions that we might be able to answer? We have done a emergency declaration as of about 3 o'clock today. So for the agencies who need that information, if you need a copy of that, you can get it from us. Two closing things before we close. One, there will be a search and rescue planning meeting after the 10 a.m. weather briefing tomorrow morning for police and fire agencies and wildlife and fisheries. We sent out an email. I'm not sure everyone got it, but that'll be immediately after the weather briefing tomorrow. And then right after this meeting, we need the mayor's, sheriff, and school board at the back conference room over here for a few minutes. Okay. Anyone have anything else? Brian or anyone? Thank you.